Hi everyone, welcome to our channel Wise Wings. This is Jishan.
Hi, I'm Maya.
So today we're going to talk about an exciting topic. It's about our journey of making wealth. Is that right?
Yes. not sure. Yeah, I think we're gonna kind of ask each other and share what we have done to attract and create wealth in our life, namely in the form of like money and like assets, I guess. Let's see what else pops up as well. And I guess also I wanted to set the stage a bit where we were talking about this before, and there's actually two components to creating wealth, and part of it starts in the invisible, where it's like how we're being and what our mindset is, and that's namely invisible stuff that's just running around in your own head and your own energy space. And then there's the visible stuff that a lot of people see, and people think that that's all you need, but I think we've agreed that actually you need more than that. You need the invisible stuff before you can do the visible stuff, like going out to do things, like actually take actions and have conversations. So we're going to integrate that and discover that together with you in this video.
Yeah, it's actually the inner journey first, what's happening inside also, that while you're taking the action. So it's always something happening. Well, it was happening with me, always happening inside, and let's just share that and express that today.
Yeah. And yeah, we hope that you get inspired and realize that it's possible for you to have what you want as well and work towards what you want as well. So let's kick into it. So
do you want me to ask you a question?
All right, sure.
Okay, so what does wealth mean for you?
Wealth, well, I actually looked this up in the dictionary. And if you look up wealth, it's the historical meaning and origin of it is actually well-being. So if you think like wealth, it's actually well-being, and it's what I got from that moment looking at the dictionary is like well-being is not just money, where the initial thought is you think about money, but it's actually wellness in all areas of your life. Because if you have heaps of money in the bank, but you're sick, that's not wealth.
Absolutely.
So it's it's having what you want and what you aspire to, but it's also feeling good in a kind of all-rounded thing, and it's definitely you have in your life things and relationships that are beyond basic needs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So then, but for everybody, it's different. The level that we'd be happy with can keep expanding, or it can be a certain level, and it's different for everybody.
Right. So is that from the definition that you looked at, what resonated with you?
I think it was surprising because, initially I thought it was mainly money. But then I'm like, actually, it's about wellness. So you can have financial wellness, so that your life is operating in a good way, even with the wealth, or even without the money. Is your life operating well? So it actually broadened my perspective of my life. Right. Yeah. So it wasn't just about the money. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree, but it's for our viewers, so let's get into it.
So so like quickly, how about you then? So we're talking about creating wealth. So for this video, it's namely about money and kind of assets, that kind of financial stuff. So how about you then?
Well, for me, I did not understand wealth till later in life. So for me, I was thinking that having a lot of money will make me happy. So I went on to the journey. So when I started to educate myself, I understand wealth. The word when I looked at that, wealth, what is wealth? So, and I started following a lot of people that are rich and wealth and started to see what is their definition, and each people had different way to expressing wealth.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not about money, right? So then I started to understand and educate that, an experience from my life too, that not always money made me happy. And I'm like, why? So now the way I started to look at wealth, like I thought wealth means just rich, but it's not. It's actually a good health, having the right relationship, right surroundings. Less is more. There's a one thing I really live by, and also a balance for life for me. Like, have my relationship, good energy around me, have my own space too. So that is a definition of wealth, and it doesn't always about a lot of money or having a lot of cash in your bank and a lot of properties or big balance.
So then I'm curious, because we're talking about mainly finances, and then we touch on other aspects of life in our videos and in our conversations. So how do you tie in like wealth and riches to your aspiration of wealth then?
Good question. I just have choices. So why I didn't go for the why I get attracted to making assets or high, like investments, because it gives me choices. If anybody is happy around me, if I can do something for them or my family or people that I love, and I have the ability to do something that will make me happy, and that's a choice. I can and it's a contribution, or I could choose to go anywhere, have a meal at a nice restaurant or buy something expensive. Those are my choices. I don't have to be bound with it.
Yeah. So that's wealth for you.
That's wealth for me too.
What I'm hearing is, yes, we work on creating money and wealth and assets and income, but it's not just about that. And then wealth to me is starting to sound like, from just what we've said here, is to live a certain lifestyle.
Correct. Yeah, that's the word. That is the word.
Yeah, so if we're living a desired lifestyle, that's wealthy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's awesome. Good. So didn't expect to go to talk about this so much, but I think it's important, because I didn't think about it, but it's important to define what wealth is for us, and it's different for everybody. And then, okay, how do we go about creating it now? Yeah, because if we didn't define it, it's like, what are you talking about? You're just talking about money, but that's actually not all there is.
Yes, correct. Okay. So how?
Okay, so
okay, you want to ask me?
So let's talk about the obvious stuff. So I think there's obviously like the job to bring you money. So would you like to start there? Like just your kind of a summary of how you've gone about having work and bringing income through your job, and then you can branch out to other methods that you've brought in money.
Okay, so if we if we're talking about different ways of grow your wealth, so in order to make the choices that we want to do or help, whatever lifestyle you want to maintain, so how can you create the lifestyle? So one of this thing would be, what I have done is I worked, and I worked, and if I work really hard if I needed to be, but I was always curious how people are growing their money, right? And I looked at some of the people that I really admire and see what they're doing and how they're making, because I could see it didn't come from just working,
just a job,
or just a business. How are they doing it? So that's when I started to educate myself outside and look for answers, and why not, like that. This is 10 years before. We didn't have that many YouTube videos, that many open information. Things are really starting to come up. So a lot of the a lot of the education are in person, not advertised, going out there, finding the right community. So I started learning. That's the learning is the main key here. And understand and take action from there. So I was looking for something, not sure what I was looking for, and I started looking on the internet what we're gonna do. How can I go into property, or how can I go into shares? Came across different courses or education and start putting myself out there for those learnings.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing is the invisible part is that you started to become curious.
Yeah.
That because you can't really, I feel like you can't really teach someone to be curious. Like you can show them things, but the spark needs to come from within.
Yeah.
So curiosity is like one of the invisible drivers that I heard in what you've just said, that led you to explore.
Correct.
So then,
Absolutely.
so that I think that's really key in, okay, we want something, and then it's so important to just be curious about, okay, and ask yourself, how can I get that?
Yeah.
And then find clues.
Find ways to do it.
Yeah.
So if I ask you the same question, what was your, how did you start your journey? What sort of drove you?
So I'm going to share this. So my Vietnamese name is, in the spirit, I was actually named Money.
So, love it.
And it was because my parents were refugees. They fled Vietnam after the war and seeking for a better life for themselves and for their family. And my mom was pregnant with me when they were on the boat, and we ended up in a refugee camp. And when I was born in there, and they named me Money. And from what they've shared and from what I got is because they wanted more money in their life, because they literally had nothing. I think Dad had a few bits of gold. He was able to trade when they landed.
No chili?
No chili. So, that gold, but he spent it really early on. So then obviously there's more to that. But yeah, so they named me Money in the spirit of wanting, I'm guessing, them and me to always have money. And I think the spirit is to always have choices and some power, and being able to afford things and survive. Right. So I think that, I can't deny that spirit has always been around me. And when my parents came to Australia, they worked really hard. Not that I really understood, but that energy was there. So they were always, looking for opportunities and working really hard. And then when me and my siblings wanted something, they would most of the time try and give it to us. So then I experienced wealth and abundance in that way from my parents growing up. And so I think that led to me seeing that it was possible and believing that when I want something, I can most of the time have it. So then so it felt really nice when I was a kid and I was living on Centrelink. So the world's delivering. And then so I didn't actually get my first job until after uni. So very fortunate in that space. But that job, my friend was working in a retail store, and then I knew she was working, and then she kind of asked the manager if they would give me a shot. And then I'm like, okay, it'd be nice to have some extra money. So it was out of wanting to, go out with my friends and stuff like that. So so that's the beginning of my, being aware that you can work and then you can get paid. So it was nice. I felt, I guess, empowered knowing that I had that ability to go out and work and bring in money. So that's the start of the job thing. And my mum, what I saw was my mum invested in property. So, she had the conversations with my dad, and then we all saw that the prices went up. So that's a way of okay, let's save some money and then invest it into something like property, to grow our wealth. Without actually having to do that much. It's like a passive thing. So you get rent, but you also have capital growth. So your net worth goes up. And Yeah, so I'm just kind of looking at what I'm sharing right now, and it's my family were role models. And then I saw that was possible, and then I'm like, yeah, I want a piece of that action as well. So yes, it was demonstrated, but I also needed to believe that it was possible, because I think you can be surrounded by people who are making lots of money in all these different ways, but if you don't think it's possible for you as well, you can totally ignore it. And they say, oh, you can do this to make money. I'm like, nah, that's not for me. Like, that's a mindset thing, right? So you need to believe that you can have that and do that in the not do the exact same things, but behave in the same way, and have faith that you can have more than what you have now.
Yeah, I agree with I sort of connect with the belief thing, because you believe, you take action. Sometimes it's hard to explain to somebody what the belief is.
Yeah.
So nothing happens outside unless it happens inside first. I really believe that. So I can connect with that has been the journey. And your parents, they're still working hard, like they're so cool. Wow. And so do you think the surroundings and being in that spirit and environment, like, what would you say that if somebody's not in that spirit and environment, their parents done something completely opposite?
Yeah, that's interesting. So obviously you can have the role models and you kind of copy them, mimic their behavior, but then there's also people who they have a certain experience in life, and like when in our youth, that dictates a lot of how we grow up and become adults. And from what I've seen is you can see that something's possible and then you go, yes, I want a piece of that. Or you can go, you're working towards something that you see something's possible, you work towards it. Yeah. Or you can work away from something because you're in a shit. And then you're like, and then something lights up inside you and kind of like, it's like a fire, and no one can give that to you. It has to come from, it's self-generated. And you might grow up in a situation where you were really poor and things didn't really change, and that's your environment, that's your family, your relatives, your friends. They all have the same kind of mentality of there's not much more for us. So you could be the one who sees that situation is not for me, that's not good enough, and I want more, and then you work away from something. So I can't remember who said it, but there's like two forms of motivation. You work towards something or you work away from something. So it's up to you to decide, do you want a piece of that or do you want to not have that, and then you work towards the opposite almost.
Yeah. And which I am the example of that. Yeah. So I didn't grow up in that surrounding. So I wanted to have a good life and give my parents a good life. And one of the things that drove me is the opposite of what the surrounding was, right? Okay. And I have to say, this has been the biggest drive to learn the other side and to actually recreate. And I am very biggest support of being who you are. So it's just what you just said, that you need to find out who, because your parents doesn't represent you. You're not represented by anyone else but yourself. Yes, we are born in a culture or a family, but we are on our own. We are individual, right? So the spark that happens inside, you can dim it down as long as you can, being part of the family, part of the surroundings. But at last, it does. Sometimes it comes out really hard, and then
like it's kind of explode or like you can gradually come out.
And then you become. And so there's nothing wrong with coming from nothing and become something. Just own it. Like this is something you do. It just that's like I would say, own it. And if you come from things and people support you, and be grateful and own it too. Like my parents, I think every parent does help their kids. They always would want the best for the kids,
and
right?
and also to that point, they're trying the best they can based on their learnings and upbringing, education.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's not perfect, but they actually are trying, even though you might go wrong. Yeah. So
you're so much off the topic.
Like it's on topic but also off topic, but I think it's actually really important that we talk about this. So let's come back to the practical things. So I think a lot of that, like the environment, the mindset, the belief, the spark, that's the invisible stuff. So let's now talk about the things that people can actually see. So what things did you, like you touched on it before, but maybe go a bit more in depth and kind of follow maybe your timeline of you creating, what you have today. Like what visible things did you do to get to where you are?
Interesting. Oh, well, I started when I was 23, 24. I had my first investment property that did not go well. I lost it in a divorce. So that I had to sell it. Plus, because I was so emotional from that incident, I just didn't have, I would say I didn't have the right education to back me up how to keep it. And it wasn't a great investment anyway, so I had to sell it. And, if it's not working, sell it, move on.
So what I'm hearing is it was a learning, but it's actually, it contributed, but also didn't contribute to your current wealth. Yeah. So how about other, I know you pursued property a bit more. Were there any other pathways that you pursued to attempt to grow your wealth?
Yes. So besides property, I always like, as you know, gold and silver. God's money, as Robert Kiyosaki said.
I haven't heard that one.
No, there is a video. I was listening to him the other day. And I also saw my parents buy that. Like it's something where we grow up. They will value that. Yeah. So did that, but the real investment. So there was no investment after that. But I just invested in myself. I traveled a lot. I had to get that out of the system. I didn't.
You're still there. It needed to be expressed, yes.
And since then, I came back to property again because I could see the passive. So then my mindset was passive income. How can I get more passive income? So property and capital growth is the key. The way you can have capital growth, the amount of capital growth you can have, there's a big chunk of funds can come to you and can be invested somewhere else. So that's sort of the education and understanding I had. And since then, property, shares, crypto, as things moves on, I just love seeing what's new things out there and to invest. And I love, because I think through the few losses and few mistakes, I just love doing the pre-checks and what's the return and how it's done, and the way the new era that we are in a digital, like I just like to see what's opportunities out there. But there's few things I will always stick to: God's money, gold and silver, property, which is a tangible asset, and shares, which is a part of buying a company, which is a long-lasting investment for a lot of people. So what about you, if I ask you the same question?
What's the question again?
Question again is
what have I done?
What have you done?
Yeah.
What's the different aspects of growing your wealth? Or
I think what I'm seeing is, so just with the diversity thing, so I've dabbled in a few different things too. The diversity thing, if you think about it, it's like planting different types of fruit trees instead of just keep planting the same old tree. And for me, I like variety. That's just like my natural thing. But yeah, I think the bulk of my wealth is through property also. And I've dabbled in shares, but I gotta tell you, like they didn't feel, it's not something I'm like super interested in. And like even when I bought shares that I was were in companies that I was familiar with, like financial industry shares, which are big in Australia. And I worked in the bank, and they gave me shares, so I held on to them for a while, and bought a few random things. But shares is not a big one for me. And then there's work, and then I've explored different forms of work, I guess in the way of like self-employment. So I've done a few different things there where I actively go out and find the work. It's not just, your job, your contract with a stable income. So I've dabbled in a few creative things, like on the side, like side hustles.
Nice.
And then we got into crypto, and crypto's a funny one. So it's kind of like new, like more recent, like in the mainstream. But like you mentioned crypto to me a few years ago. I'm like, nah.
I should have bought more Bitcoin in 2017 when I mentioned
it. But it took other people and I guess more conversations about it to get me to be interested in it. So I saw a Facebook friend talk about crypto, and then she shared a video, and then I watched it. I'm like, there's valid points to this around why you might want to invest in Bitcoin, etc. So that was just a couple of years ago. So we got into that space, and that's has been more of a capital growth thing. So to hold, so it grows in value, and we've dabbled in a little bit of staking, which is it's kind of like getting rent from your
cryptos. Yeah, so the crypto is actually
so there's a bit of that. Back in the day, we used to get interest from our bank accounts. Not so much anymore. There's that way. What other ways? I've actually also lent people money here and there, and then they paid me interest. Not heaps, but still a decent amount. So I just remembered that. So that's a form of bringing income. And what else is there? And I think another thing to add is sometimes you get money and things of value from people that you may have asked for, but also they kind of just show up. And I think this is getting a bit woo-woo. We won't dig into it too much, but I think if you're in a state of mind that's a match energetically, frequency, like imagine like a radio. If you tune into a radio station and you keep listening to it, then you're on the same frequency. And I think you can be on the same frequency as wealth and money, so it attracts into your life. Here's my one example, which feel free to try it. I need to actively, consciously try this again. But there was a week in my life, a decade or so ago, where in that week, I wasn't poor, but I wanted more money. And I was just telling myself, chanting in my head for like the whole week or a bit, that I need money, I need money, I need money. And it was from a very unattached place. I wasn't desperate. I just knew I wanted more money. So that's what I was chanting. And in that week, in the span of a week, there were 3 separate incidents where I attracted a few $100s by just being out and about. Yeah. And I started to think, is the devil following me around? Tempting me with this? Because I'm like, and I've looked back multiple times analyzing what was going on, and I think I was on the frequency of money, so money showed up in my life, but I had to be out and about. I don't think if I stayed at home then it would have come. But so I actually didn't take any of that money. I definitely could have, but it just felt so weird to me at that time. Never experienced anything like it, that I actually didn't take it, but I could have for sure. And I think there were signs. So you can look at that as a good thing or a bad thing. Me going forward, I'm choosing to look at it as a good thing, as long as you're not stealing it from anybody. No, absolutely not. So that's some other ways I've brought it into my life. So there's the taking action, research, investing, learning from other people, but also, yeah, there's a big part of you, because if it doesn't start with you, nothing's going to happen. Yeah.
Well, we would like to know that what you got from our conversation, and what was your money, how do you define wealth, and what was your money journey? Please comment below. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah, let us know what you've gotten and what you're gonna go and do now. We'd love to see you take action by watching our video.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye.
See ya.